77 WABC and Bergen Newbridge Medical Center honor the life of legendary broadcaster and our friend, Ernie Anastas.
Hi, it's Ernie Anastas. You know, your thoughts can affect how you feel. Bergen Newbridge Medical Center is the largest hospital in New Jersey, providing comprehensive, equitable, compassionate, and high-quality emergency inpatient and outpatient medical care, plus mental health services and substance use disorder treatment. The Bergen Newbridge team can address your total health needs in one convenient location. Call 201-225-7130 for an appointment or newbridgehealth.org.
Feisty, fearless, and fair. She's an Emmy-winning journalist from the White House to war zones, telling all sides of the story. This is the Rita Cosby Show. Breaking news.
And tonight on the Rita Cosby Show, there is a lot of news breaking. Let's get to a few of them. By the way, Cheryl Atkinson, who just did a big exclusive interview with President Trump, she's going to be joining us in just a few moments to give us the highlights. But in the last hour or so, some big decisions came down. The Supreme Court lifting a block on GOP's redistricting of the map in Alabama. In other words, clearing the way for a potential for a new seat for Republicans in Alabama. That is big news because that comes after the Virginia Supreme Court, remember, recently shot down the Democrats' efforts to do a reconfiguration of redistricting. What does all this mean? Well, with the midterms right around the corner, it means potentially maybe another seat for Republicans in Alabama. It means they get to save the seats as is in Virginia pretty much, unless maybe the Supreme Court steps in there, the U.S. Supreme Court on that one. That was a state one. Also, you got Florida, you've got Texas. There are some decisions maybe coming down in Georgia and South Carolina. It is an action-packed week, but so far, the decisions are doing well for the Republicans and not well for the Democrats. So this could spell good news for the GOP as they head into the midterms. And also President Trump in the last little bit, he was at the Rose Garden. It is National Police Week. And he said, you know, the dream ticket would be J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. And then he said, I looked at both of them because they were in the room for this big dinner, saying, I'm not going to make any endorsements yet. And he didn't particularly say which order it could be on the 2028 presidential ticket. But clearly you could tell President Trump is thinking of what he calls the dream team, and that would be a ticket for 2028 presidential. Remember, he can't run again, even though there's talk of a third term. We'll get to that in a moment. But President Trump saying that the dream ticket would be Vice President Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. And in other breaking news, the Louvre apparently has been targeted by a terrorist attack. There is a plan that has been thwarted. That's the good news. It was in the works. And authorities are coming forward and saying that there was some master plan to do some sort of attack on the Louvre and also on Jewish facilities in Paris. Apparently, they have arrested a number of individuals, one who said that he had ties to ISIS. So very scary stuff. But the good news is they apprehended that individual. And speaking of protests and attacks on Jewish facilities, tonight, another one taking place in New York. Remember, there was one at the Park East Synagogue. Well, now there has been another protest that took place, this one in Brooklyn at the Jewish Center, where there was a meeting tonight talking about land deals. And a number of protesters got out of hand. There were apparently several hundreds of them that were around the facility chanting and shouting and screaming and marching through the streets there. Again, the other day, a couple of them had those pro-Hezbollah flags. And if that doesn't send chills down your spine to see it on the street of New York, I don't know what does. There is a lot of news tonight, and everybody, of course, also talking about what's going on with Iran. President Trump coming forward and saying that the deal that Iran presented is, quote, not acceptable in any shape or form. And it sounds to me like things are gearing up. There are reports that there is a U.S. submarine, and they kind of put it out there. They telegraphed it. The Pentagon revealing the location of one of the most secretive submarines in the U.S. Navy. It's considered like the behemoth, the grand Godzilla, if you will, of the U.S. Navy, with some very high-tech capabilities, but a sign that it is close to being in theater. It's near the Rock of Gibraltar, a place I know well. And that is right there, not too far. It's at the base of course, Spain and across from Morocco. And it doesn't take that long to go from there to the Mideast. So that's a very, very interesting message saying maybe we are gearing up and getting ready. And President Trump saying what he got back from the Iranians is pathetic. Here is what President Trump had to say a little bit ago.
For the time being, the ceasefire remains in place?
You know, it's unbelievably weak, I would say. I would call it the weakest right now. After reading that piece of garbage they sent us, I didn't even finish reading it. They said, I'm not going to waste my time reading it. I would say it's one of the weakest right now. It's on life support. They understand these are all medical people. Dr. Oz, life support is not a good thing. Do you agree?
Diagnostic.
I would say the ceasefire is on massive life support, where the doctor walks in and says, sir, your loved one has approximately a 1% chance of living.
And joining us in just a moment, we will have Sharyl Attkisson, the great correspondent and host. She just did a big interview with President Trump. And I want to play a short little clip before we bring Sharyl in. This is what he said to her about the state of Iran and what they have, or really what they don't have. This is cut number 9.
Would you say the war is over? Is it paused, or is it very much active?
Well, they're militarily defeated. In their own minds, maybe they don't know that, but I think they do because I deal with them. And we cannot ever let Iran have a nuclear weapon. But they are militarily defeated. They have no navy. They have no air force. They have no anti-aircraft weaponry. They have no radar. They have no leaders. Their leaders are gone. The first set, the A team is gone, the B team is gone, and part of the C team is gone. But I think we're dealing with people that have a certain power. It's very interesting because, you know, they make a deal and then they break it. Then they make a deal, they break it. It's a difficult group. But from a military standpoint, I mean, if we left today, it would take them 20 years to rebuild.
And joining us now to talk about her big interview with President Trump is the great journalist Sharyl Attkisson. She hosts Full Measure with Sharyl Attkisson all around the country. And this was a biggie. Sharyl, it's great to have you back on here, my friend. And congrats on the interview. And God, there's so many topics I can't wait to ask you about. First on Iran, what did you think was the big takeaway in your conversation with President Trump?
Well, despite weeks and weeks of us kind of being told we're on the verge of a deal and then we're on the verge of blowing them up again, that we're really seems to be no further along than we were kind of when we started this talk. And I kind of think, knowing the president like we do, at least publicly, it actually takes a great deal of restraint and perhaps some strength to be put through what the Iranians are putting him through in terms of trying to make deals, and not have him just decide to go back in and, you know, fight and explode and take the criticism at home over the gas prices and over the question of when this ends and what's next. So we really didn't get any further along on that.
Yeah, it is interesting, though, like you just said, the restraint that he has shown, trying to give them yet another chance and really kind of hoping for the best result, and they seem to keep falling flat. Sharyl, you also hit on with him voter ID and some other stuff. I want to play a little clip. Here is where he talked about the importance of voter ID, and that's something that he is so big on. Here's that discussion. Here's a little bit with you and the president on that. Here it is.
Anytime you have mail-in voting, you're going to have a rigged election. Anytime you're not using voter ID, The Democrats don't want, they're fighting us on the Save America Act. Anytime you don't have, when somebody says we don't want voter identification, that means they want to cheat. Then they say we don't want citizenship. We don't want proof of citizenship. They don't want it to be a part of the voting process. And yet, when it comes to voting, the interesting thing is 97% of the Republicans want voter ID. But if you add the Republicans and the Democrats together, 86% want. Jimmy Carter, I mean, I wasn't a big fan of him as a president, but Jimmy Carter had a committee that was set up, and along with Scoop Jackson, some very respected people. And the primary finding of the committee on the election stuff, primary finding of the committee was can't have mail-in voting, it's crooked.
Cheryl Atkinson, it's interesting. You could tell he's so passionate about the SAVE Act. Does he think it's going to pass, though? What's your thoughts after talking with him?
Well, he sounds like he's still very committed to the idea that has to happen, but I don't really know how he can make it happen because he can influence certainly what Congress does, but he's not able to tell them what to do, and he can't direct the Senate in every way. And I'm as curious as everybody else as to where this goes. He's right about the public sentiment. You know this, and people listening probably know that, yeah, a majority of Americans do agree with what he's saying. This should be a no-brainer in terms of the will of the people. And maybe one of the best examples of how Washington really works behind the scenes at cross purposes with what we think they ought to be doing many times, even on an issue that has such bipartisan support as this one does.
Cheryl, one of the other things, too, in your wide-ranging interview with the president, he talked about vaccines, but not necessarily mandates. And I know that's something, near and dear to your heart in terms of the topic, because I remember interviewing you. You had that awesome book where you exposed the corruption and the collusion between big pharma, government, and media. What did you learn from talking with him about that?
Well, he has definitely come around over the years. I think he's always had questions about vaccines. Even in his first term, he agreed to a vaccine safety commission with Bobby Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., very early on, and then was blocked from accomplishing that. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. told me after that something happened practically overnight after he met with Trump and Trump agreed to this commission, that somebody blocked it. Well, that somebody, a woman named, I can't remember her name, Katie Talento, something like that, recently, just in the last couple of days, admitted or stated on her social media that she worked for the White House and that she was tasked with keeping Bobby Kennedy away from Trump after Trump had agreed to the Vaccine Safety Commission, and that's why it didn't happen in his first term. Yeah, fascinating. I asked him if he knew that someone had supposedly blocked, him from Kennedy in his first term, and he said no, and kind of just switched to saying Kennedy's doing a very good job this time. But I think, this has been a tough one for the president. He wants to say he supported the COVID vaccine and got it out quickly and that did some good. And yet, on the other hand, I think he recognizes that a lot was not handled properly with that there have been many adverse events, and that the whole, as he said, childhood vaccine schedule, which has never been scientifically tested together, deserves to be looked at. So what he said in the interview, if people missed it, that while he supports vaccines, he thinks that the number we get, something like 72 recommended doses today for American children up to age 18, he says that's far too many. And then he said, this is interesting, that he thinks if we would reduce that, cut back on the number of doses, we would have a good response in terms of the autism rate. So he seems to be acknowledging the established scientific links between some vaccines and some cases of autism.
Oh, that's interesting. By the way, I'm a godmother of autistic kids. So to me, that is really interesting. And that's obviously something that Bobby Kennedy has been very much in focused on all of that. Wow. Before I let you go, Cheryl, your thoughts overall on how the president's doing as he's heading into the midterms. You and I have both known the president a long time. I knew him well before he was president. And I just think about who could handle all of these things that he's juggling. I mean, he's about to leave for China tomorrow. He's dealing with so much with Iran, all that incoming. He's got the midterms. He's got all these other issues that you so beautifully and powerfully talked with him about. What was your sort of thoughts of just sort of where he is mentally now? And I also think about who else could handle juggling the weight of the world like he is and commanding the world. And what a different president we have, certainly compared to when Biden was there.
Well, as someone married to a husband the same age as President Trump and for 42 years, who has dementia, my husband, it's just starkly amazing to me to see the command that this president has over a variety of topics. And he's one of those, I've interviewed a lot of politicians, and I feel like there's two types. There's the type that is a top-line political figure or president where they're briefed on something and they may be able to speak to it because somebody told them, the basics and they remember enough to make a comment. But then there are those who really dig in and they know the subject matter. And it's amazing how much depth he has on so many different topics. A lot of people are anxious to say, it sounds like, especially after my interview, that he's mentally slipping. And if you didn't listen to the whole thing and someone will pull out a clip and try to take it a little bit out of context and try to make it sound like there's something wrong with him, I didn't see anything wrong with him. And I would tell you that the difference, I first interviewed him in 2015 when he was campaigning. And he was more nervous then, more nervous about his answers, worried about some of the things he would be saying, surrounded by people who are worried he might give the wrong answer, that type of thing. He's very confident and comfortable. That's the biggest change I see.
Yeah.
And when he was going to be late for my interview because he was in the Situation Room, he was 3 hours late, which is understandable, and that's happened before. He peeked in when, just to tell us that he was going to be late. He's so comfortable and casual and relaxed. It just doesn't seem like this is bothering him. It seems like he takes things very seriously, but he doesn't seem to be weighted down as if it's a horrible stressor on him. That's my takeaway. Couldn't have been more friendly, couldn't have been more generous with his time despite all that was going on.
I agree. There seems to be a comfort and a continued command that he has. Which really is impressive. Well, Sharyl Attkisson, the great journalist, my friend, you're terrific. And everybody, be sure to check out her full interview. The Full Measure with Sharyl Attkisson is the show, and it's an incredible interview. I watched it from beginning to end. You did an awesome job. And thank you so much for joining us. Sharyl, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. You're terrific. Thank you so, so much. And everybody, we're going to go to a break. I'll take your calls. 1-800-848-9222. Wow. An inside look at what was going on in the White House with Sharyl.
The Rita Cosby Show. It's the Rita Cosby Show.
Boy, a lot of topics tonight. We were talking about voter ID with Sharyl Attkisson. Also, her big interview where he talked a lot about Iran. And it sure looks like right now President Trump is seriously considering some sort of combat action in Iran. Maybe some more strikes soon. And he's heading to China.
Rita Cosby is on. The Rita Cosby Show presents Back the Blue.
And this Back the Blue segment coming from New York, where dramatic body cam footage that was just released. I was just watching it all day long. It is so gripping. Shows a cop saving a suicidal woman who was clinging to a skyscraper. She was perched 30 floors up on a Brooklyn, New York skyscraper. An initial officer who came on the scene approached her. He said, "Hi, my name is Nicholas. What's going on?" And the woman sobbed back, "Tell my mom and dad that I love them." The officer said, No, please don't do this. We don't want to see you hurt yourself. He was calm. He was in control. And boy, he was certainly caring. And he said, "Listen, we care about you. We don't want you to hurt yourself," to the woman. She said, "Please take me to the hospital." And he said, "Yes, we will. We can do whatever you want us to do. Anything is better than this. Please let me help you. And at that point, members of the NYPD's Elite Emergency Services Unit moved in, and they pulled the frightened woman over the guardrail to safety. Incredible footage and incredible patience and love coming from members of the NYPD. She was taken to a hospital and is getting the help that she needs, thanks to our brave men and women in blue. And it just shows the very difficult emotional work that our men and women do every single day. By the way, this is National Police Week this week, and I think every day should be National Police Day. But I'm glad that there is a big one there and a big events, which we'll talk with you about tomorrow, taking place, especially in Washington, D.C. I have many friends there that are there honoring them. And the president was also with a lot of the men and women in blue tonight, too, as well, because we know how much President Trump loves them as well. Well, he has a lot on his plate. He's talking a lot about Iran, guys. There is no doubt about it, calling the offer that Iran came back garbage, also saying that the ceasefire is on massive life support. He said there's about a 1% chance that this ceasefire is going to stay, which means pretty much 99.99999. There will be strikes coming. Now, the big question is he's going to be leaving tomorrow to go to Beijing. He is meeting with Xi Jinping, the president of China. And there's a lot of factors there because, of course, China gets a huge portion of its oil from Iran. And then there's a lot of issues, of course, with China's relationship with Iran, also with Russia's relationship with Iran, Russia and North Korea, China, all of these bad actors sort of all together in different, realms, if you will. And then you also have all this stuff about artificial intelligence, about trademarks. There's a lot of big issues on the plate with business. And President Trump is bringing a whole bunch of business leaders going over to China. He's got Elon Musk and he's got Tim Cook of Apple, and he's got a whole bunch of others going over there to talk. So there will be a lot of business. But you can bet that Xi Jinping's probably going to bring up Taiwan. He's definitely going to bring up Iran, because this is hurting them big time because they can't get the oil from Iran that they need. So what kind of deal can be done that's good, most importantly, first for the U.S., and maybe that also is good for China and helps them to put pressure on Iran at this pivotal time? And I say all of this because my gut tells me clearly he will probably do something after he gets back from China, or maybe on the way back, knowing President Trump. I don't think he would want to do something while he's over there. He famously, remember, he was in Mar-a-Lago, and he was actually having a dinner, I think, or a lunch with Xi Jinping. And that's when he leaned over and said, oh, by the way, I just bombed so-and-so. So maybe he wants to have another moment like that with him, although I don't think he wants to be doing high activity against Iran when he's over in China. That could get a little bit messy. Maybe right after they take off and they get out of Chinese airspace, then maybe who knows what happens. But I think the timing is that it will at least be until after all the meetings and everything else is over in China. And those are expected. He leaves tomorrow. Of course, it takes a long time to get there. He's doing meetings on Wednesday and Thursday. So maybe Thursday afternoon, Thursday night. Who knows? But it seems like President Trump is fed up unless China can put some big pressure on Iran to come to the table. But President Trump today said that Iran is a mess. It's an absolute mess. He said what they came back to them was essentially garbage. And they know that they are jerking Trump around, because he comes back and he said, here's the deal. We want you to have no nukes. We want you to do X. We want you to do this. And they come back and they essentially barely give him anything. So they know it's a joke what they're giving back to him. They're just buying time, straggling, and trying to also hope that maybe China can help them as well. So that's the game. It's the waiting game, and it's sort of who's going to blink first. But President Trump today said that the leadership of Iran is a disaster, and he knows darn well that you just can't trust them.
Look, I've had to deal with them 4 or 5 times. They change their mind. They're very dishonorable people, the leadership. Don't forget it's the 3rd level. The 1st level is God. They were unreasonable. The 2nd level is more reasonable. The 3rd level, nobody wants to be president, They say, who wants to be president? There's nobody raises their hand, But they change their mind. I've had that in business many times. The mind changes, you call them. These people that you make a deal and then the next day they send you a document that takes 5 days to get there when it should have been there in 20 minutes. You know, it's a pretty simple document. They will never have a nuclear weapon, yeah?
They will never have a nuke. And I'm telling you, for all these crazy critics of President Trump, he's the only guy who's had the guts and the courage to take on Iran. Everybody else was just kind of blowing smoke, saying, yeah, they can't have a nuclear weapon, but didn't do anything about it. President Trump is the only one who's actually taking action and making sure that they don't actually obtain the weapon. Because you know darn well they'd use it. You know it. And in fact, President Trump today said that Europe should be absolutely worried because clearly they're in the crosshairs of Iran. They could get all the way to Diego Garcia. That's the same amount essentially as to go to a French base or wherever else. So they better wake up. And in fact, this is interesting. In just the last few minutes, this news crossed that apparently France is sending one of its carrier groups into the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. It is the Charles de Gaulle carrier group has moved in there. That's new because you never saw France doing anything before. They were too busy having escargot and French onion soup. Although I do like both of those, by the way, for the record. But also the UK has now Keir Starmer, Neville Chamberlain, Keir Starmer has also sent a warship into the area. It is apparently on its way as well, headed towards the Mideast. So that's interesting. It's called the HMS Dragon. It would be the HMS Rabbit if it was named after Keir Starmer, but it's called the HMS Dragon. Thank goodness. I'm sure another different prime minister called it that. But the good news is they're now trying to pretend like they're getting on board. Because I'm sure they're like, maybe we should kind of help now that it's sort of the final throes. So we look like we have some sort of a backbone. And Iran is already sending a warning sign just in the last few hours to France and the UK, saying that deployment of warships near the Strait of Hormuz will, quote, be met with a significant Iranian military response. Because the last thing they want is to see even a Neville Chamberlain type ship coming in. Not the sailors, because they're great on the ship. The military there is great. I've been with a lot of the British military guys. I was with them in Kosovo and many other places. They're great. But their leader is just a disaster. So now they finally get a backbone, and they're sending a carrier group in, at least one ship in, and they're already getting flack. And we'll see if they blink. Because Iran is already saying that there will be some sort of action if they get too close. So we'll be monitoring that carefully. Also, there are reports tonight that UAE is secretly carrying out some strikes in Iran because they, of course, have been getting so much incoming. They've been like flooded with so many different attacks that have been coming in from the Iranians. Remember, hitting oil facilities and a whole bunch else. They've taken even more than Israel has. So a lot of activity, a lot of moving parts here, you guys. Meantime, here is President Trump because he said, listen, I know that gas prices are high. They've gone up a lot. He expected it, but he said they're going to drop like a rock as soon as this war is over, and he believes it's going to be over soon. And today he actually talked about an interesting idea about reducing the federal gas tax. Now, it's about 18 cents a gallon, which doesn't sound like that much, but it does all add up. And it certainly shows that he's trying to make an effort to try to bring down gas prices. That, and of course, the war wrapping up at some point soon, all of that, I do believe, will turn things around. But listen, it's an interesting idea, and clearly gas prices are on President Trump's radar. Take a listen.
Are you going to suspend the federal gas tax?
Yeah, I'm going to reduce until let me tell you, as soon as this is over with Iran, as soon as it's over, you're going to see gasoline and oil drop like a rock. Going to be dropping down like a rock. I mean, already, look, just on the basis of, things have happened. When it first came about, 20% of the oil came out of Hormuz. That's a lot. But, with time, it's like, they go into Texas, they go into Louisiana, they go into Alaska, a lot of Alaska. Alaska's, sort of, it seems like very far away from the from Asia, but it's actually a relatively short trip by comparison to other locations they have to go to get oil. And they go into Alaska. In fact, our big problem is we're building bigger docking to fill up.
And let's go to your calls, guys. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Reggie from the great state of Texas on line 5. Reggie, your thoughts tonight, my friend?
Well, first thing, Ms. Reed, I think President Trump could help a lot of the anxiety if he were to mention, hey, when this thing's also over, we're going to get some of this Iranian oil. It's going to help defray the cost of this war. Because listen, freedom isn't free. Someone has to pay for it. Yes, we're taking care of this for the nuclear threat. But if they do get their regime change, which I'm sure we're rooting for and we want, that's going to help them. So I think anything to help the taxpayer, because we paid the burden. This has been a heavy burden for us so far. No blood, but our treasure's being spent. And I also think this could help the Iranian allies that live in Washington, D.C. This would help quiet them down because that would give them less to bark about with what it's costing.
Yeah,
so
I like your idea, Reggie. It's sort of the skin in the game. Remember, like when everything happened with Iraq, there were talks about us sort of going in and getting part of the residuals of the oil fields and different ideas. And Trump is sort of the one who thinks that way. So that is a very interesting point, that maybe there's some sort of percentage of profit of coming back, when the country comes back to take X amount or to get some of it or reroute some of it. There's a lot still there on Carg Island. Who knows? Maybe there is something sort of ambitious that could be done, especially look at the other countries, too. I wonder if that could also help. Like you just said, maybe some of it could go to some of these other countries that have also suffered horrible losses at this regime. I think about UAE and some of these others. They're oil rich. So are we, thank goodness, under President Trump, not under Biden. But thank goodness we are. But you're right. That's an interesting idea. The problem is, first, you got to win the war at this point, because there is so much going on unless you take that during all this activity. But I think Trump is going to do something very ambitious because he's not just going to want to go in and do some little pinprick and then leave at this point. He's got to do something big and bold because they're clearly thumbing their nose at him. They know coming back with this, a garbage offer, as Trump says. They know what this means. They're just like, too bad, forget it. These guys are zealots. They're nuts. And it just shows that the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, they're the ones still in control, Reggie. So I hate to say it. We got to pound them to the ground. Your thoughts?
Yes, I think, frankly, last night's too bad. I'm not fighting, so it's easy for me to say that. But I think after that comment where they actually said that we should surrender, I think last night we should have eliminated that. You got to keep going down the list, Ms. Reed, of who's negotiating. Okay, Tier 1, no good. Tier 2, little better, still not there. Tier 3 hasn't learned. So what you need to do, you keep going down the list until someone says, yeah, I think it might be a good idea to capitulate. And real quick as a follow-up, remember now, we're jumping through hoops not to knock out their oil infrastructure, to keep something in place when this is over so that the new Iran, if you will have economic stability. But that also comes with a form of appreciation. If we're going to go out of our way and jump through hoops and not conduct normal warfare, which would be to knock out an infrastructure of a country to make it weak to win the war, that also, again, that's coming to a cost. We're paying for that because we're not going about the normal means to finish a country off.
Although Reggie, I disagree in the sense, not with what you're saying, but I disagree. I just would say that we haven't done those traditional hits yet. I don't think they're off the table. I think you think they're off the table. I don't think they're off the table. I think President Trump would like to not have to hit some of them because he realizes what it will do to some of the citizens also as well, because they're going to be without power and it's going to hit a lot of directions. But he's got to hit some of these dual use locations. And he hit that bridge. Remember that big bridge right away? He was like, okay, take a look out the window. Kaboom. I think he needs to do a few more of those. And I think he may have to do a power plant or two. It's a tough thing to say, but these people are zealots. They are fanatics, and they can't stay in power. And you know what I'm worried about, Reggie? I'm worried about, you brought up the first, second, third, fourth, fifth tier, whatever it is. I'm worried we might need to go down to like the 20th tier, just because there are so many fanatics that are still, I believe, around there. And this Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, earlier today, we were talking with Newt Gingrich, who was with us in studio, former Speaker of the House. He was saying that I think the estimates are somewhere like 200,000 Army folks. Now, not all of them are fanatic zealots, but probably a lot of them. So you can imagine there's probably a lot to hit. And maybe we got to start hitting some huge barracks. We got to hit some major locations. We know where a lot of them are in Israel. The good news is we're not in it alone. Israel has the best intel, along, of course, with the U.S. military, and they are revved and ready to go. So I think there's going to have to do a major team assault, and it's going to take a little bit longer. That's the reality. These people are fanatics. They're zealots. And they clearly are messing around with the U.S. and baiting the U.S. And Trump is not going to like that one bit. And we may get to some of those locations that you think are off limits. I think not on President Trump's watch. I know him. I think they're on his radar right now. And I think maybe even in a matter of days, maybe later this week, we might see something. Reggie, let's see. Let's just pray for the good people of Iran that they can rise up and take back their country and hopefully do that soon. Reggie, thank you. 1-800-848-9222. And everybody, we will continue after the break here on The Rita Cosby Show.
It's The Rita Cosby Show. This is The Rita Cosby Show.
A horrible crime in New York City where a mentally deranged man who literally just got out of the psych ward a few hours before pushes an elderly retired teacher down the stairs. How could the judge let this individual walk? It is just disgusting. And boy, is it a breakdown of the system. And also, so much rhetoric and hogwash coming from the Democrats about Iran. I couldn't believe it. I was sitting there watching over the weekend. Maria Bartiromo did a really great interview with Ro Khanna, the California congressman. And he said with a straight face that Obama was so much better when it came to Iran, that he was giving, I guess, a master class. What is Ro Khanna on? Well, luckily, and in a very good way, Maria Bartiromo took him to task. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Mike in South Carolina. Line 4. Go ahead, Mike.
Long time no speak, Rita.
Hey, you too, my fellow Gamecock friend. Thank you.
That's right. Well, hablo poquito español, todo italiano. 11 de mayo, hoy. Today is my birthday.
Oh, Feliz Navidad. Yo puedo hablar español. Happy birthday, my friend. How beautiful.
72. Thank you, Rita. 72 candles on the cake. Damn.
Wow. 72. Yeah. And that means you got another at least 40 to go. Well, Mike, happy birthday. We love you. And I'm so glad that you called in. It is the best way to hear from you and reconnect with you again. It makes my day special, and I hope it makes your birthday special. Mike, we love you. You always add so many great things to the show. So happy birthday, Mike, who is not 72. You got to be 42. With that great energy and fire, Mike.
Roger Stone here. Your dollars are losing ground, but gold isn't. American Sovereign Bullion helps you protect your wealth through real, tangible assets. Through their nationwide wholesaler network, you get some of the best pricing on gold and silver delivered straight to your door. Since 1912, the U.S. dollar has lost 97% of its purchasing power. Meanwhile, gold continues to prove its strength. So call 844-272-2428. That's 844-272-2428. Or visit dyingdollar.com. Request your free gold and silver guide. That's dyingdollar.com.